Feodosia is burning for the second day in a row. It seems like nothing will be left of the oil depot.
At least 3 fuel tanks are on fire. Footage of the flames has shocked the internet. It's too late to put it out now.
And Russians are sounding the alarm. Stability as planned. Their own people are profiting off each other.
Why the hell are you raising prices like this when the country is facing such a fuel shortage? You just sit there, with all these problems. Why are you profiting from this, huh?
Russia could potentially attack NATO much sooner than Europe thinks.
Now experts are warning about little green men at NATO's borders. This is a new stage of hybrid warfare where the Kremlin is trying to test the West's reaction and prepare the ground for future military moves.
Well, here's a surprise. Ankara has unveiled its new toy.
Turkey has revealed a weapon from which there is no escape.
Looks like it's time for Putin to head to the bunker.
It strikes both sea and land targets at a distance of over 275 kilometers.
A new level of military aviation in America as well. Introducing the helicopter of the future.
Fully autonomous without a pilot, it can lift up to 33 tons of cargo. This is a next-generation Black Hawk designed for reconnaissance, logistics, and strike missions.
Tough luck, it just wasn't meant to be. 16 units of enemy armored vehicles against one Azov Corps. The result, -9 IFVs and 3 tanks.
But aside from IFVs and tanks, Russia could really face some very serious problems with its rear lines because of Tomahawk missiles. This is reported by the Financial Times. Ukraine could receive them in just a few days. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about now, because on the 17th, Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky will discuss how many missiles Ukraine might receive. Pavlo Lakichuk is joining our conversation, a military expert and head of the security program at the Center for Global Studies Strategy Vatiman. Hello, Pavlo, we're glad to see you.
Likewise, good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. So let's actually discuss these missiles. As I understand it, that's what will be discussed. Zelensky and Trump. The Financial Times writes that Ukraine could receive between 20 and 50 missiles. Well, for now, that's very few. At least that's how it seems to me. What do you think about this? Give us your assessment.
Here we need to consider the political aspect, the military aspect, and the military technical aspect all at once. And probably the financial aspect as well. From a military standpoint, the Tomahawk missile is a ship-based missile. The American Navy has 2 arms. A short arm, the Harpoon, and a long arm, the Tomahawk. The Harpoon is small and nimble. At short range, it's very fast and very effective. The Tomahawk is a sophisticated missile system specifically designed for executing long-range precision strikes. As we often emphasize, it's fundamentally a deep strike missile, meaning it is notably large, possesses less inherent maneuverability, is quite heavy, and delivers an exceptionally powerful impact. For almost the past 30 years, in any conflict involving the U.S. Navy, the Americans used cruisers, destroyers, and submarines to launch Tomahawk strikes against enemy territory. It has proven itself well. But I repeat, that's how it's been since these missiles were first created. They fell squarely under the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, a significant international agreement when the United States, in its strategic considerations, explicitly excluded the naval component, specifically those with sea-based missiles, from the comprehensive scope of this critically important treaty. And literally until recent years, this restriction applied to them. It was in effect. That's why the main launch platforms are the Ticonderoga class cruiser with 96 launchers, the Arleigh Burke class, which has a bit fewer, and the United States nuclear submarines. It would be great for us to have our own Ticonderoga, but it's unlikely anyone would give it to us. That would cause a sensation in the Black Sea. But nevertheless, let's talk about something realistic. After the collapse of the INF Treaty, the Americans began developing land-based platforms. And the main platform that was adopted and started being developed in 2021, and the year before last, it was finally put into service. For the U.S. Armed Forces, this became the Typhoon or Typhon platform. It is also called by another name. It's a universal thing, a really good thing. Why am I paying attention to it? Because besides, the launcher can be used to fire SM-6 and SM-9 anti-aircraft guided missiles for missile defense. These missiles are a generation ahead of the SM-3s that are used in our Patriots. But there are accordingly few of these launchers. There's a long waiting list for them in the US Army, especially now on the West Coast. Mainly the states are getting them for obvious reasons, especially in the East. The Marine Corps has more mobile launchers there. They tried to use robotic systems but gave up on them. They want these too. And with the Americans, the current administration has a queue. First the US Army, then the Allies, then everyone else. We're somewhere in fourth place. Whether we'll get these missiles this way is a complicated question, because having the missile is good, but you also need the launcher. Just recently, the Americans presented based on those robotic launchers that were developed for the Marine Corps. These are smaller launchers, but again, how well they'll work is another question. We need to analyze why the American Marines decided to abandon them. Nevertheless, if we were to acquire the Tomahawk or the Typhoon, that would indeed be truly very, very great. First of all, this will enhance both our air defense and missile defense capabilities and will serve as a deterrent for the Russians. Regardless of the number of Tomahawk missiles we receive, it will act as a kind of deterrent for the aggressor state. Let me remind you, in 2022, the Danes provided us with harpoons. These are also sea-based missiles. Almost everyone else only has the ship-based version. But the Danes created a ground-based launcher, and we used it to strike the Boyko towers. After that, the harpoon hasn't been used in the Black Sea. But the Russians know for sure that if they try to come at us there, they'll get a harpoon in the side. It's a kind of deterrent factor. In this particular context, acquiring these crucial missiles would, of course, undeniably be a very significant step forward. But the pressing question remains: how exactly will we manage to obtain them? Here, the critical financial question inevitably arises. The budget, which was put together just a few days ago, so far in the first approximation, provides for significant funding for Ukraine of about $500 million to help the brave armed forces of Ukraine. But just to be absolutely clear, under President Biden, the total was, if I'm not mistaken, $30 billion over 3 years, maybe a bit more. Last year, there were still $4 billion left in the budget, which the Trump administration never used. $500 million, but that's for half a Patriot system. Patriots. Well, or maybe for one system, some miniature version for Tomahawks. If this includes development, modification, missiles, or certain restrictions, like it was with the Abrams tanks. They even received a special designation for Ukraine because they removed classified components and simplified the design. The same thing could happen with the Tomahawks. All of this requires R&D. All of this needs engineering work, preparation, in other words, everything. Will this money be enough even just for Tomahawks? For at least a small quantity? Well, I really doubt it. The second option. This is the one the Americans went with. It's the Europeans, by actively purchasing these goods and services, are actually directly financing Ukraine's ongoing purchases. In fact, they're essentially buying crucial weapons and essential military equipment for Ukraine and then transferring them directly to it. But here's the critical point. This option is also theoretically possible, but for that, a three-way conversation is needed. For now, we only hear a two-way conversation. That is, Zelensky is speaking, Trump is speaking, and here, the political aspect. From Zelensky's point of view, well, obviously, ask for the maximum, and Tomahawks are the kind of maximum that Zelensky can ask for. Well, at least you'll get something. And from Donald Trump's particular point of view, it certainly seems to me, at least at this very moment in time, that this is a strategic and effective way to genuinely force Vladimir Putin to ultimately come to the negotiating table for discussions. Not the actual transfer of these missiles to Ukraine, but just the statement that this could happen. Trump's statement yesterday that he needs to consult with Russia supports this version. So let's be We are cautiously optimistic, hoping for the very best, but we must always rely on ourselves.
Absolutely. Pavel, I want to talk to you about Crimea. I think it's a very important topic. It seems to me they're making progress there, at that oil depot in Feodosia. The Russians said that only some remnants caught fire there, but judging by the fact that this is already the second or third strike, and as before, everything is burning with a very bright flame, the occupying forces really do have a problem with gasoline in this region. So more than 50 drones have been shot down, including in the last 24 hours, flying towards Saki and also towards the Belbek airfield near Sevastopol. Please comment on the strikes against Russian targets in Crimea. How successful have they been? What is there still to strive for? And what are our ambitions for the near future in the context of these strikes?
Well, this is what you would call the comprehensive use of forces and means. It's not about sending a single Agavka, which may or may not make it. For missiles or drones to reach their targets, you need to conduct a combined operation. First, you use a harm to knock out the radar, then the drones strike. By precisely targeting the critical surface-to-air missile defense systems, a secure and unobstructed corridor is effectively created for advanced long-range drones and powerful missiles. These formidable aerial assets then successfully break through the enemy's air defense line, ultimately reaching their designated targets and decisively striking the main strategic objectives. The same goes for naval drones. If we were to successfully execute an operation to bomb the Kacha airfield, thereby effectively forcing any enemy helicopter stationed there to make an immediate and unplanned landing, they would then be completely incapacitated and consequently unable to track the movements of our naval drones, ensuring their operational security while they're crossing the sea. So, overall, this is the result of a complex operation that has been going on for more than a day or even a week. Right now, as for Feodosia, as I understand it, it's been one of the main targets over the past week. The second strike occurred.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
A successful strike. If Aksionov wants to twist the truth there, people in Crimea are watching more than just that table. The smoke rising several kilometers over Feodosia is spreading over the city from the direction of the oil depot. However, they also possess the crucial knowledge and expertise to meticulously check and analyze the extensive data available on specialized fire maps. There exists a powerful and invaluable resource that clearly shows detailed temperature signatures and thermal anomalies across the entire vast globe, providing this critical information practically in real time, allowing for immediate and informed decision-making. And in Feodosia, everything there is lit up red. It's not just two barrels burning. The Feodosia oil depot is burning down. What will be left of it? Who was it that said the remains are just smoldering now? These are the remains of the oil depot. Some critical parts might potentially survive, but they most certainly won't be in good, usable condition. And naturally, the Russian occupation army, as well as the Crimean occupiers, will undoubtedly have a much harder time getting essential fuel supplies. This will significantly impact their operational capabilities. There are already complaints coming from Sevastopol and Crimea about the lack of fuel and lubricants. It's not going to get better, only worse, because the Russian occupiers have one principle. First and foremost, if there is absolutely no money available, then, my dear son, you most certainly won't be able to eat, and your dad, unfortunately, won't have anything to drink either. The military forces will ultimately acquire the very last remnants of what they currently possess, specifically the occupying army, and consequently the entire civilian population will be completely deprived of everything, left with absolutely nothing at all. So that's exactly what you should expect, except in Feodosia. There was, well, today, at the very least, a series of strikes was carried out on Sevastopol facilities and on the Fedukin Heights, and the Sevastopol CHP, the one with the Siemens turbines, the famous one, you could say, and a number of military facilities on the northern side. For now, it's hard to say what the results of the strikes are on all these sites. They aren't particularly remarkable. In Feodosia, it's immediately obvious by the column of smoke, but as for the airfields and military industrial facilities, let's wait. there will be more detailed information. I don't think that Ukraine, our defense forces, will stop such a significant shaping operation in the Crimean direction, which is a strategically important area, not only because Crimea is our Crimea, we know it well, we know where to strike, but also because Crimea is the rear base for the grouping of forces in Kherson and Zaporizhia. And if Gerasimov declares that the next target for his army will be Zaporizhia, then we need to make sure that there is no one and nothing left to capture that target.
Pavel, there's something else I'd like to ask you. Essentially, right now, the AFU is also preparing Russia for a blackout. Right now, we're specifically talking about the Nizhny Novgorod region. There, they reported an attack on an energy facility. Satellite images captured a fire at one of the region's key energy hubs. According to the local governor, on the night of October 14th, they repelled a drone attack in the area. Naturally, there were no civilian casualties. But nevertheless, as they write, as a result of the drones falling, or rather, the drone debris, one of the energy facilities was damaged. Please, what is your assessment of this strategy? Let's call it the CHP strategy, so to speak. How could this work?
I don't think these are the main targets of our defense forces' strikes, the deep strikes. Deep strikes are aimed at practical targets. First and foremost, that's the Russian oil industry. These are our sanctions, which cut off Russia's funding, essentially, for their occupation army, but not only for the military-industrial complex. All this stuff that works for the new one. Second, it's the arsenal, ammunition depots, and enterprises producing for the military industry. This is precisely what could potentially hit us, what could conceivably come our way. That's why it is absolutely right and undeniably better to completely destroy it on site without any further delay. Dispose of it on site, as the emergency workers say. The disposal of Russian shells, Russian drones, Russian missiles should be carried out beyond the Urals and before the Urals. As for the crucial railways, that is precisely how these essential shells, powerful rockets, and vital fuel are consistently delivered to the very front line. Regarding the critical power sector, here President Zelensky emphatically stated that he had actually warned Putin not to proceed with such actions, specifically not to cause us a complete blackout during the upcoming fall and winter seasons, because we are certainly not the same as before Putin and we are much more resilient now. Now, unlike in 2022, we are much better prepared for this and we are capable of responding. An eye for an eye. This is essentially an attempt to restrain Putin from taking corresponding aggressive actions. It seems that Zelensky was simply unable to make Putin stop and truly reconsider his actions. Putin is actively trying to cause a complete blackout here in this region with his devastating strikes. Well, threats like these explicit warnings, a comprehensive strategy of deterrence, they only truly work when concrete actions are genuinely ready to follow the spoken words. If you talk but don't act, then the deterrence strategy simply loses its effect. That's precisely why retaliatory strikes on the Russian power grid, an eye for an eye, as you so aptly stated, are entirely justified and perhaps could potentially lead to effectively restraining Putin from launching further devastating strikes on our energy infrastructure. Otherwise, Russians will suffer as well. Moreover, it's even easier for us to do this since we have a unified looped system while the Russians' power grid is structured differently. Regionally, it's built like 100. These are critical regional energy centers, and if even one of the hundreds of interconnected facilities that comprise this vast network were to experience a significant malfunction or go offline, an entire and extensive region would be immediately plunged into a widespread and debilitating blackout, causing immense disruption. A case in point, last summer in 2024, after the accident at the Rostov nuclear power plant, a blackout occurred across the entire south of Russia. Why? Duplicating this hell for reasons beyond our control. God was with us, He helped. But And the Ukrainian Defense Forces also indirectly contributed to this because it was the Kursk nuclear power plant that was supposed to duplicate and provide backup for the southern region. And there were hostilities taking place in the area of the Kursk nuclear power plant in the Kursk region. That's why the Kursk region couldn't back up Rostov. And that's how they ended up with such a blackout. That's why it's regional. That's why Russia is being shut down region by region. It's easier than shutting down Ukraine for them. But both our engineers and military and their engineers and military are aware of this. If the Kremlin realizes this danger, they will heed the words of the President of Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Pavel, for joining us on the air. Pavel Lakichuk, military expert, head of security programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21st Century. All the best to you. Goodbye.